Yeah, my hope is just if you're a political content creator, you try to stay as objective as possible. You know what I mean? Because I think some people bring a little too many emotions involved, and then it just sways their bias in one way.
Yeah.
You know?
It's in this environment, my goal, because my show is an opinion show, I'm sharing my opinion, is to make sure that facts come first. I demonstrate the facts properly and as objectively as I can, and then follow it with opinions.
Got it.
Because what's happening in our current political environment is people, it's less so that sort of the Trumpism effect is convincing people that Trump is right on everything, but more so convincing people that it's impossible to discern what fact is. And so a lot of people really are fine with the conclusion of, I don't know, we all sort of live in our own echo chambers. We all have our own version of the facts. Who really knows? Even though there are actual facts, we can know what is true. And sometimes things are verifiably false, often when they come out of Trump's mouth. And so making sure we don't lose sight of that, even as we all throw our opinions onto the facts, is super important.
Well, it's hard to find facts these days. There's so many false information everywhere. It's like, where are you finding these, you know?
Yeah, and I think I stand by with any of my criticisms of left-wing media. Doesn't take away from the fact that I think right now we're in a really wonky environment, unbalanced environment, where, for example, people will dispute this, but taking as objective of a look as I can at it, there's no equivalent of Fox News on the left. Fox News goes further in their propaganda for Republicans than an MSNBC, for example, would ever go for Democrats. A good example of that is you haven't ever seen MSNBC have to pay $787.5 million for lying about an election so brazenly that even with our really strict laws around free speech, a defamation case was so threatening to Fox News. So with that being said, I think the MAGA echo chamber's worse. But one thing I've been voicing a lot as we are a little bit distressed right now is, as a left of center media environment, to not then just start trying to mirror MAGA and to still value facts and try to not descend in just the same exact bubble.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because I think there are outlets that show Trump in a very negative manner.
I think some people, I've seen people who have taken him out of context and stuff like that, but I think if you were to accurately report on him, you would have a very negative perception of him. To my previous point, just super objectively, find me an example of a president who loses an election in the United States and then tries to illegally keep himself in power, and the only thing standing in between him and holding on to power illegally is his vice president going no, and then being outcasted from the party for it. That is not a matter of, oh, you're just so biased. That's just, do you have a basic respect for democracy? And the both sidesism of every issue makes it to where you can have a panel where some people go, oh, no, well, that's not that significant. No one really cares about that. Well, we should. And the facts point to a really dangerous man. And mainstream media, for example, a lot of people think that your liberal legacy media is too liberal. And I understand that a lot of the voices on those networks have a liberal bias. But actually, a CNN, for example, bends over backwards to prove they're not biased by creating this artificial neutrality, which isn't really what we're seeking. Objectivity is good, but neutrality is a little silly because some issues aren't neutral.
Right.
And they end up both sidesing issues that aren't both sidesable, like Harris versus Trump's respect for our democracy. I don't know if you know this, but Trump called for the termination of the Constitution on Truth Social.
I heard about that.
And that's something that I bring up incessantly because that's not really excusable. It's online. He hasn't deleted that post, and people look past it. How do you vote for someone who's going to take an oath to the Constitution when they've said, oh, because I think the election was stolen, I think we should terminate all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution? That's just not a matter of, are you liberal or conservative? It's, do you agree that our system of government is something that should be preserved? And I thought conservatives abided by that, but they've sort of abandoned it.
Yeah. I think he could have handled that incident better, but they were writing negative stuff about him way before that. You know what I mean?
Like when he said "grab by the P word"?
Yeah. I mean, that was the first one I remember, but there was a lot.
How would you tell a story about that in a non-negative way?
Well, not that specific moment. I mean, that's hard to defend, but just in general, like, I think they've done analysis on what percentage articles are negative versus positive. And
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm sure I've seen the graphic you're talking about. I remember Elon Musk posted a graphic, and it was legacy media outlets. Harris, I think it was 88% positive.
Yep.
Trump, 80, whatever, something high 80s or 90% negative. And I don't know what are the 10% of positives. I don't know how they're finding 10% positive stories for Trump. But I will say, no one ever includes in that calculus that if you go over to a much more influential network than any of the legacy media outlets, Fox News has a bigger reach than ABC or NBC or CNN, MSNBC, and no one ever does their analysis, which is 100% negative for Harris. And
do you think so?
positive
It's
for
100?
Trump. Near, yeah.
She did go on Fox News. I thought that was an interesting choice for her.
She did. What do you think? I thought she did pretty well.
I thought she did horrible, dude.
Really?
You thought she did pretty well in what sense?
Because I've been willing to admit interviews for a lot of her vice presidency were her weak point, and she would just come off sort of unprepared or uncomfortable, and then would just revert to talking points. There, she really held her ground, and I thought that a big criticism of her was what I was saying, that can she be commander-in-chief if she's not comfortable to go into the ring with difficult interviewers? And I thought she dispelled with that talking point, because while, of course, there are going to be negative moments since it was a Fox News interview and they prepped it perfectly to try to get her on everything, she really had good responses to the border stuff, to the trans thing, to the economic questions. And I thought it showed her ability in off-the-script moments to handle oppositional interviews.
It was brave of her. I'll say that. I thought the interviewer could have been better. I thought he was cutting her off a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. That's just like, I don't know, common courtesy.
Did you see the SNL skit?
No, I actually didn't.
It was really fun.
They were just cutting her off the SNL skit. Yeah, I thought he could have done better, but no, I thought I don't know. Didn't they
what did you find negative about it? I'm curious.
Well, did they end it early? I think I remember it was cut early or something.
I don't remember.
It was supposed to be longer, and her team cut it.
Maybe so.
But no, I just thought like it was just like we said earlier. I want to see the real side of you. She was giving these answers that clearly were rehearsed, which is fine. But elaborate on that a little bit more. You know what I mean? It just felt like copy paste. Maybe.
I think we hold her to such a different standard than Trump. Some of this feels less relevant now that he's won, because the comparison between the two of them is less relevant. But you know, she'll go in, she'll get asked a question about a subject, and even if it's a prepared talking point, she addresses generally the subject. And then Trump gets asked any question, and he just starts saying, they're coming from jails, they're coming from insane asylums, and repeats like 5 talking points. Whenever we are prepping for the show each day, whenever the campaign was going on, he would do all these different events. We'd be playing it out loud while we're working on other stuff. And, you know, any question he's asked, I could throw out 3 different phrases that he's going to go to, and he would go to one of them. And often they're just him meandering and doing what he calls the weave, which is really just rambling. I think we never criticize, not we never, but folks who criticize Harris for not comprehensively enough or succinctly enough addressing certain questions never put that on Trump, when it's difficult to find an example of him just directly and concisely answering questions.
Yeah, there are no examples I remember of him just clearly like talking about policies, for example. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you that for sure.
Yeah, and when he does, like the viral tariff moment I know you referenced earlier, they convey a true lack of understanding about the policies he's talking about, which is what frightens me, that Americans are so willing to vote for him when every time he's asked about policy, if he really does give it a go, it's like a child talking about policy.
Well, hopefully he could just make the right hires, you know?
Yeah.
Wherever you guys are watching this show, I would truly appreciate it if you follow or subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. It helps us get bigger and better guests, and it helps us grow the team. Truly means a lot. Thank you guys for supporting, and here's the episode.